Hey, welcome to my channel. Subscribe if you want to subscribe. I suggest not to turn on the notifications. Um, dislike this video. Comment if you want. I do read the comments. Any feedback or some critiquing. I'm open to critiques, being open criticism basically, a constructive criticism basically more than anything else. Even questions, I do look at those comments and I will answer them the best I can when I do get notified. That is as well too. But I do look at all the comments. Um, so point at hand, I'm just going to talk about yesterday's football, week 14, basically. My picks, if you saw my prior video, they were out the door. I mean, honestly, I thought they were at least maybe 50% of the times correct, but turns out, I mean, I was sort of correct in some aspects. For one thing, I said to pick the Eagles because they would definitely cover, and they definitely certainly covered. The Giants shows otherwise that, like this draft, the next two drafts, they have to rebuild the offense as well as the defense, specifically the defensive line. You have to rebuild that defensive line as well as the fact that they need to build some, get some wide receivers, and of course, for sure, a quarterback. Daniel Jones is not your future. Daniel Jones is not the future for the New York Giants. And as a Giants fan, I believe he's not what we need him to be. He's not the quarterback that we expect him to be. Basically, everyone thought he was going to be. Gettleman made a huge mistake. He tried to justify it, but in reality, it was a huge mistake. Honestly, he should have picked Darno. I thought he should have picked Darno, or for that matter, Josh Allen. For that matter, I mean, Josh Allen showed you how good he is. Honestly, if you had Josh Allen, I think both Gettleman and McAdoo probably would still be coaches right now. To be honest, but in any case, Daniel Jones, I think it's more of a case of what you see him as is probably as your backup quarterback more than anything else. I think that's pretty much what he is a backup quarterback for a very good team. That's as far as you can go. He's not going to be your like number one lead basically at this point. And honestly, he reminds me a little bit of Dave Brown, to be quite honest. If you call back then, way back when in the 90s, like 97, 98, see, late 90s basically, we had the Dave Brown, and he just was pretty much horrible. We got Kerry Collins, and then decently enough brought us to the Super Bowl that one year, and then the next year they fell off dramatically. And then of course we get what's his name? It's My mind's drawing a blank on the guy's name. Before Manning replaced him, Kurt Warner. We get Kurt Warner. He was doing decent enough with the Giants, though, but like they were playoff bound at that point, and then we decided to sit him to like develop Peyton, Eli Manning. But in any case, I have a feeling that's what's going to happen here with Daniel Jones. We're probably going to get a quarterback for 1 or 2 years, and sign someone for in the free agency market that was decent enough that's can work in this system, and then maybe draft someone 2 years from now. Um, Now, as far as how the Giants lost, I mean, it was a given that they were going to lose. Definitely by at least 10 points for sure. They were definitely going to lose by more than two touchdowns. The question is by how much? I didn't think it was going to be this much, to be quite honest. But in reality, I'm just surprised that the Giants actually scored 20 points on the Eagles. But I think by that point, when the Eagles were like at 35, they're like, we don't care. Let them score as much as they want to because we've got the game in hand, and which is pretty much what it was. Saquon Barkley, that's the only highlight. Honestly, I think right now you'd love to keep him, but in reality, I don't see him with the Giants in the future because the fact is, as he progresses, you're not going to have the. I don't think he's the person to rebuild right now with. He's young enough for a team that could use him, like the Buffalo Bills or the hell, even the Bucks, or Buffalo Bills, the San Diego, not San Diego, L.A. Chargers, or even for that matter, the L.A. Rams. And or the definitely the Arizona Cardinals, and the Cardinals as well as the Miami Dolphins. I think he'd be good trade bait for those teams, basically. I mean, but Tyreek Hill's already with. I mean, if he was traded to Miami, granted, we're not going to get Tyreek Hill, but if we could get those draft picks, draft capital from them, that would be great. But honestly, I doubt that's going to happen. I mean, I think everyone's going to know that Saquon Barkley, he's proven that he's good enough right now. But 2 years, if we could use this year to prove otherwise, and I think he's got 1 year remaining on his contract, we could trade him off for a draft pick, and I know you're not going to get a number one draft pick, but if you could get a second and third round draft pick, or at least a second and fourth round draft pick, I think that might be good enough for us to help us out in the long term. Um, but yeah, I mean, reality, it's one of those things where the fact that the Giants uh, were not that good enough to sustain themselves. I mean, yeah, they're in the playoff mix. Honestly, if they are in the playoffs, they're not going far anyways. Because quite honestly, if the Giants were to make the playoffs, which would be by miracle, I mean the way the Commanders are playing, as well as the Seahawks, and as well as the Lions. Look at the Lions are like pretty much there. Um, I think honestly, the Giants will. It'd be a miracle for them to make the playoffs at this point. Honestly, if they'd beaten the Lions and the Seahawks like they were supposed to, and as well as the Commanders, then they would definitely be in the playoffs for sure. They're in there 100%. But now their percentages have dropped to the point where like I think the probability is like maybe 30% of them making the playoffs. They're the lowest out of all the teams to make the playoffs at this point right now, and probability wise, anyways. Um, but I mean, as far as that, like people would compare it to maybe Daniel Jones. Like, oh well, if you had Daniel Purdy, look, honestly, Daniel Purdy being a third string quarterback, or even like practice on the practice squad, practically quarterback. Honestly, it's more of a case where like look at it from this way. He understood his role. He knew full well the talent that was surrounded around him, basically, and he knew their defense would keep him in check. I mean, that's what at least Peyton Manning realized with the Denver Broncos, and such, and any other quarterback that knew that their skills were diminishing, but they knew if their defense was great, all they had to do was just keep them in the game and not minimize the mistakes. That's what Daniel Purdy did. He minimized his mistakes. He knew full well not to go crazy. He didn't have to go crazy. I think Shanahan said like, okay, like, hey, look, boom, 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 boom. That's it. Do not go, like, try to minimize your mistakes. Don't throw, give the ball over. And I think you're good at that point, which is what happened. I mean, granted, yeah, he had a high QBR rating, but in reality, I think it's because of the fact of the way the plays were designed for his teammates, and all he had to do is to make sure the ball was there. I mean, honestly, if Daniel Jones was in that same situation, I think Daniel Jones would have done really well at that point as well, too, especially with the Bucks, Tampa Bay Bucks, the Buccaneers defense. I mean, they're decent enough, but not great. Let's see how Purdy does. Everyone was like comparing Purdy to like, oh, might be the second coming of Joe Montana or the second coming of Steve Young. No, he's not that. I mean, honestly, somebody even like referred to him basically, hey, look what happened with the New England Patriots when Drew Bledsoe went down. Tom Brady came in, and look at Brady now, the goat. Is Purdy that? No. I mean, honestly, I doubt it. Let's see what happens when he go in the next 3 games, 4 games actually. If he's playing the next 4 games and they win all those 4 games, specifically against Philadelphia and Cowboys, then it might be a different story. Let's see how he does with those defenses, specifically with the Dallas D as well as the Philadelphia D. Let's see how well he does with those. If he does really well with them, then I think it's a case where like, all right, then he might be a decent enough quarterback. He might be another Joe Flacco. That's the thing. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Now with the Giants, the fact is with Daniel Jones, the fact that you got to get someone in place, who you gonna get? I mean, you had a Baker's Mayfield. The question is like, is Mayfield good? The way he did what he did with the Rams, like in 2 days before getting picked up. Honestly, he could be like another Vinny Testaverde, or for that matter Jay Cutler, or even Rex Grossman. Good 1 year and then like bad in a few more years, and then a good again for one more extra year, and then bad again from that point on. He might be another Nick Foley for all we know. I don't know. It's a case of like he might be good enough to handle it, but not good enough to sustain himself for that long. Uh, and so that's why I'm not sure if like if Dick Baker Mayfield is the right choice to be the Giants quarterback. I mean, maybe Dable could like do something with it. I don't know. Honestly, I think it's going to be another 2 years before we get another quarterback. Uh, Honestly, though, I'm thinking about it now. It's more because, like, you know what? Maybe get Mayfield for like 2 years, 2 to 3 years. That's it. Just sign him for 2 to 3 years. He might be good enough to help you out to keep you in the playoff hunt at least. Now the question is like, can he be good enough with Dallas at that point? Because like, look, let's look what Dallas did against the Texans. That was the question comes down to is did they deserve to win? For me, it doesn't matter. A win's a win. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter how you win. It's just so long as you win. That's pretty much it. I mean, the Houston Texans defense, as well as the Giants, when they played the Giants twice, even like at the Thanksgiving game. Granted, their defense wasn't that great, but they were short-handed considerably. It showed basically a lot of their weaknesses on the Cowboys' offensive aspect. Basically, it's one of those things where Dak Prescott. Look where Dak Prescott is right now. I think he's not leading, but he's up there in interceptions right now when he came back from his injury. It's just a question of now. All you got to do is basically, if you have a good secondary, really good secondary, and like decent enough line that you could actually pressure Dak Prescott, he will be pressured into throwing, into interceptions or turning the ball over for that matter. So I think it comes down to that basically is like any defense. It's a question of can Dallas do well enough against, let's say, the San Francisco 49ers or the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll see when that happens, when they play them again. Now the Jets and Bills game, that was going to be that we knew that was going to happen. Once you saw how it played out, yeah, it was a given. Half my picks, of course, I think you saw my prior video. Of most of my picks out there, as I said, like pretty much a bust. I mean, I knew the Cowboys were never going to cover. At least I was right about that. I think I said that take the Eagles to cover the spread. I don't know about the Rams and such and all the other games that I mentioned about. I completely forgot, to be quite honest. I didn't about to read. But I mean, the Bengals winning by 13 points. I mean, okay, that was a little surprise. I honestly thought, the Vikings would actually win against the Lions. I did not know. And look, the Lions are like coming up there basically. And I did say take the Jaguars over the Titans because I was pretty sure the Jaguars, the way Trevor Lawrence is playing right now, I think he's going to be that quarterback that he was expected to be. I honestly thought the Giants should have just tanked the season to get Trevor Lawrence, but that didn't happen. Honestly, Trevor Lawrence, I think if he's surrounded with, you know what? If the Giants can trade Saquon Barkley to the Jags for some draft capital, I think the Jags will do really well with, basically Lawrence and Saquon in the backfield, and get Lawrence some decent wide receivers. He'll do well enough. And Evan Engram is already a decent enough tight end. Basically, you saw what he did yesterday at that point. The Ravens against the Steelers. I mean, that was a bit of a surprise, but I think I called it saying that the Ravens should beat the Steelers because even still without what's his name? I forgot the quarterback's name. Lamar Jackson. I think the Ravens would still win outright anyways. I mean, the Steelers have no quarterback. They need a quarterback, true and true, basically. The Chiefs barely beating the Broncos, that was a little bit of a shocker at that point. I didn't really think, I thought the Chiefs for sure would run away with that game. I didn't think the Broncos were going to keep it that close. And the same thing with the Panthers and Seahawks. Honestly, I thought maybe the Panthers might hold off on their own, and I knew that the Seahawks were not going to cover, but I didn't think the Panthers were going to win outright. Had I known, I was like, oh hey, yeah, I would have chosen the Panthers. But in any case, I mean, right now I think the Patriots and Cardinals are playing. I think it's a tie game. You know what? I'm not going to call that game. Honestly, it's already passed at this point. So now it's just a matter of next week 15. You know what? I'll call my week 15 on this coming. Actually, I won't have this mic with me, so I might have to do through a video through what's that called? Headphones, basically at that point too. But we'll know for a fact that for week 15, at least winning outright for sure. San Francisco is beating Seattle. Cleveland's beating Baltimore. Buffalo's definitely beating Miami on Saturday. Minnesota against Indianapolis. Yeah, I could see Minnesota beating Indianapolis. The Bears losing to the Eagles at this point. I mean, honestly, yeah, I think the Eagles win either. The Eagles will still win outright until they clinched off everything. Then will they start benching their players? The Jets or the Jets and the Lions. I don't know what the favorite is, but I'm thinking the Lions will actually come out and win this one. Same thing with Carolina Panthers. I think they're going to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dallas against Jacksonville. Dallas is probably going to win it again. It's probably going to be a sloppy game for them again, and to the point of it's just one of those things where they'll just barely come out with it. Houston and Kansas City killing them outright. Arizona beating Denver for sure. New England, I think, will beat Las Vegas. I think Tennessee will definitely beat the Los Angeles Chargers. Cincinnati will definitely beat the Tampa Bay Bucks. And, of course, the Giants and Washington game. Tough one to say, depending what it is and who's out and who's in. I'm going to say it's probably the Commanders that probably going to win this game outright, the way they're playing now. And that Monday game, the LA Rams against the Green Bay Packers, I think the Packers actually will lose. Even though they're going to be agreement, I think the Packers will lose because the fact is, like, I think Rodgers is done and like he just doesn't care at this point. To be honest, I think he's done and he just won't care at this point. Um, in any case, it's already been 15 minutes. If you've been here with me for 15 minutes, thank you for that. Thank you for bearing for such a long time. I usually try to keep my videos as short as possible, like five, definitely under 10 minutes, but at least between 5 to 10. But I'm trying to keep it to under 5 minutes, basically. But in any case, a lot of the cases you'll see basically my videos are unedited, off the cuff, free basing, my opinions basically and such. And again, these are only my opinions and my opinions alone. No one else's, does not represent any organization, company, or uh, family members, relatives, friends, or such. It's only my opinions alone. Um, in any case, as I say, unfiltered, unedited, and unrehearsed. Until next time.